This is News at 8.
Thank God it's Friday. Hello, good evening and welcome to the Primetime News on Joy News on Multi TV. In our headlines tonight, former President Rawlings commends justices hearing election petition but urges them to ensure they deliver a ruling that will inspire the confidence of both the winners and losers. His successor, President Kufuor, shares similar sentiments. Meanwhile, IDEC says Ghanaians must preach the message of peace before delivery of the Supreme Court's ruling. Communications Director for late President Mills recalls his final moment as part of our series on the first anniversary of his passing. The squatters at Kumasi Slum accuse KMA of wrongful destruction of their property. We'll also take a look at proposals to increase the marriage age from 18 to 23. We have all these plus the latest in sports and business. Please stay with us. First story, former President Rawlings has called on the Supreme Court justices hearing the election petition to ensure they deliver a ruling that will inspire the confidence of both the winners and losers. Speaking at the National Summit program organized by the Institute of Democratic Governance to foster national peace and security after the ruling, the ex-president said this is particularly crucial because the country has other challenges to deal with. He also advised the media to be guided by the principle that the agenda-setting role should always protect the national interest.
The Institute of Democratic Governance, IDEG National Summit, sought to foster national peace and security in the aftermath of the Supreme Court's ruling. Representatives of the various political parties, civil society groups and traditional leaders were present at the ceremony. Former President Rawlings first commended the panel of Supreme Court justices in the ongoing election petition hearing for their professionalism.
Allow me to commend our Supreme Court justices for their composure and moderating influence throughout the hearing process. Their performance so far under the scrutiny of television cameras is worthy of mention. The efforts that the chairman was making to also lower the temperature, the humor that he would provide every day, no doubt all designed to make sure that the situation did not boil over when the time comes. We will, of course, also expect our judiciary to deliver a ruling that will inspire the confidence of both the winners and losers and further go to strengthen and protect our political process, national cohesion and self-belief.
He later tasked the media to be professional in the dispensation of their duties.
For us to achieve an incident-free post-court ruling scenario, we need the full support of the media and indeed every citizen of this country. We have to concede that some of our media have not helped to objectively disseminate news about the ongoing judicial process, but have rather contributed to unduly raising the political temperature, as I said earlier. The media have to revise their approach to reporting electoral disputes and be guided by the principle that the agenda-setting role should always protect the national interest and not be tarnished by the petty, biased and parochial political agenda some of them pursue.
President Rawlings later encouraged Ghanaians to unite in fighting corruption, economic battles and crime. In a speech read on his behalf, former President Kufuor also called on Ghanaians to embrace peace after the Supreme Court ruling.
But true peace, ladies and gentlemen, emanates from true justice. Peace will prevail if justice is seen to be manifestly upheld. It is in this vein that I ask all concerned to pray for the justice of the Supreme Court, to have the clarity of mind and vision, to be bold and fearless in the discharge of their duties, which destiny has called upon them to do. This will be the bedrock for the peace that will prevail after the ruling.
Bishop James Sarr of Action Chapel and President of the National House of Chiefs, now Professor John Nabila, also spoke at the event.
And the palaces do not recognize political colors. The palaces recognize citizens of the traditional area, citizens of Ghana, and welcome everybody. And in that light, we would want Ghana to stand as one.
May God help us that after the verdict, by the grace of God, no matter how bitter the pill is, on whichever side of the bed you sleep upon, God will grant us grace to choose voice over violence. You don't really want to rule a broken country, a ravaged country, and a country in shambles and tatters. So then, if you sincerely want to rule, let us put this country together.
And on the same issue, former President John Kufuor says Ghana should applaud itself for the conduct of the election petition so far. Speaking about what he expects of President Mahama and Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, the two key stakeholders in the petition, expressing commitment to accepting the result is not all it takes to ensure peace and stability. He describes their declaration and the live telecast of the petition hearing as fortunate, but calls for prayers for the judges for an acceptable outcome.
I believe the proceedings have gone along the processes provided by the National Constitution. We should applaud ourselves for that. And now we've come to the point where the judges soon would retire to deliberate and come out with their ruling. What I would say, that all of us citizens, and I haven't heard anybody who wouldn't want peace after the ruling, all of us concerned for peace of Ghana, we should pray that the good Lord himself will touch the hearts and minds of our justices so that they would deliberate well, wisely, so they come out with a ruling that any audience across the nation and beyond would see as a ruling of justice, of truth. So across the board, people would respect and accept with equanimity. Fortunately, the petitioners and respondents have both declared that they would accept the ruling of the courts. Saying this does not mean ruling that is skewed favorably is what the two sides talked about. They talked about ruling founded on truth and justice. It's they who announced in their separate ways that they would accept the outcome of the proceedings through the Supreme Court. I would just say they should stick by their submissions, their words, and that I pray that they would both feel that when the justices come out with their ruling, they've been fairly served.
And meanwhile, youth leaders of the various political parties have pledged their commitment to maintain the peace and unity in Ghana after the Supreme Court's ruling. Other civil society organizations, including the Accra Market Women Association and the Council for Women Traditional Leaders, also called for peace after the court ruling.
Two weeks ago, we started the process, and Sir John, the General Secretary, as I speak to you today, has already completed touring 6 regions, is level 4, and to make sure that the idea, the principle, and the conviction behind our decision to go to court, which is premised on peaceful resolution of conflict, is something that we hold dearly, and we encourage all the party members also to do so.
The lesson from this experience is that we need electoral reforms. We need to be more vigilant. we need to consider some changes. And above everything else, as we said in our statement read by our woman organizer, we need to make sure that we have a comprehensive database, national database of all residents in the various districts.
All the youth organizers from the various political parties also spoke with passion and encouraged their supporters to come out in search of peace, and also stated in loud terms that those who are funding and supporting the activities of young people into violence must be openly castigated so as to ensure that we live in peace. I have no doubt whatsoever that Ghana will see peace when the Supreme Court makes its final determination.
We should continue to preach peace. We should look at those neighboring countries, Ivory Coast, Liberia, Sierra Leone, where one election turned the country into a battlefield, and vow that under no circumstance will we allow Ghana to become a war-torn country like those countries.
Calls by Minority Leader Oseche Mensah-Bonsu for a bipartisan committee to investigate the recent rampant fires has been rejected by government. Deputy Information and Media Relations Minister Murtala Mohammed at a media briefing today says government will not set up any such committee as being pushed by the minority.
Murtala Mohammed noted that such calls discredit security agencies in the country because they are expected to be non-partisan, and they are.
We as a government is surprised because of that call, because as far as we are concerned, the investigation is not being done by NDC as a political party, neither is it being done by the executive arm of government. The investigation is conducted by the security agencies in Ghana, and the security agencies are independent state institutions. They will be there whether NDC is in power or not, and I think that we should give them that credit and respect those institutions. But if the trend is that anytime we're in opposition, we should lampoon, we should discredit independent state institutions and only see them to be credible when we are in power, I don't think that that is the kind of way we would want our politics to move in this nation.
He called for restraint on calls for the report by the American investigators to be made public.
The report is not a report owned by the Americans who came to assist our security agencies. The report is the report owned by the security agencies of this country, who would submit the report to His Excellency the President. So the Americans have left. So I have listened to some media houses and individuals who are saying that the fact that the Americans have left, the report should also be available. They only came to assist our security agencies. So I would want people to exercise some restraint. Once the report is finalized and submitted to His Excellency the President, we would know.
The Association of Yale Alumni has held a forum to discuss issues pertaining to education and governance in Africa. According to them, many African nations have become victims of missed opportunities for growth since post-colonialism.
Yale has been a world leader in producing thought and change since 1701 and continues to be a conduit for global conversation and change. Speaking to Joy News, moderator for the Yale alumni, lawyer Ruth Bochio, says education in Africa is the way to improve African development.
Okay, well, we believe that education in Africa is the way to achieve any sort of African renaissance. So if you're talking about Africa's growth or development, you have to look at education and what needs to be improved so that we bring out graduates who are employable, graduates who are thinkers, and graduates who are looking to give back to the next generation and establish a better country.
Yale alumni also believe that since independence, many African nations have faltered and become victims to missed opportunities for growth due to issues surrounding governance and leaderships. Vice-Chancellor of the University of Ghana, Professor Ernest Aitis, said, although the incentive of teachers are not attractive, government must find a better alternative for a win-win situation.
May not give you the results you're looking for. So yes, by all means, let us do something about salaries, but let us think more about the kind of preparation that we give to our teachers It's very fundamental. Until we deal with that, we're going to struggle with the quality of education.
He added that the University of Ghana is making adequate preparation for the admission of the 2013-2014 SHS graduates.
In preparations like everybody else, we will take as many students as our facilities can accommodate. So every student that we can easily accommodate, both for residential purposes as well as for academic purposes, we will admit.
You're watching the Primetime Bulletin here on Joy News. We'll be right back. You're welcome back. Now, part of an uncompleted shed building located in Sakama here in Accra has collapsed while construction work was ongoing. One person was injured in the process.
The incident, which occurred a few hours after midday, drew the presence of the police under the guide of DSP Susanna Ejay. The accident scene was inspected by the police, but they failed to speak to church authorities present at the scene as they absconded on arrival of the police. According to a resident of the area who shares a wall with the church, this is the third time an accident of this nature has occurred at the construction site. She spoke on condition of anonymity.
There were men, when even it fell, there were carpenters on the top working. The guy standing right here, so he sustained some injuries.
The police, however, say the church would be under investigation.
We have to invite the elders, the church elders, to come and then we talk to them. We have a lot of discussion when they come.
$138 bags of a substance suspected to be Indian hemp are to be destroyed by the Ashanti Region Police Command. The police say they are waiting for a court order before burning the exhibit. Mahmoud Mohamed Nuruddin reports.
This quantity of suspected Indian hemp was intercepted by the police at Sawaba in March this year. According to the police, 2 persons were arrested in connection with the intercepted substances, and they are still on trial before the court. The owner, however, is still at large. Police want information from the general public to arrest the culprit. Laboratory tests have been conducted by experts from the capital city, Accra.
At the time we seized these goods, we addressed a briefing on it, and it gained a lot of publicity. And the forensic lab in Accra has come to check this, and you can see their seals. The case is before court, and they've been on remand since they were arrested on the 23rd of March.
Government statistician Dr. Philomena Nyako recently suggested the legal marriage age should be fixed at 23 years to enable women become physically, socially and psychologically more prepared for procreation. But is this suggestion feasible in the current day and age? Matilda Nyakwa Dennis has been finding out.
Section 14.2 of the Children's Act 1998 pegs the minimum age of marriage at 18. The age 18 is seen in many cultures as old enough, and this is no exception in Ghana. Even the most violent and sexually explicit movies are never rated above age 18. So universally, 18 is accepted as the age of maturity regardless of a person's religious, psychological or social stance. However, government statistician Dr. Philomena Nyako recently stoked controversy when she suggested the legal age of marriage should be fixed at 23. In her views, this will ensure women are more prepared physically, socially and psychologically for procreation. But Reverend Jane Mensah, head of marriage counseling at the Charismatic Evangelistic Ministry, does not think legally pegging the marriage age at 23 is the way to go. Although she partially shares in the suggestion to raise the marriage age up a bit from 18.
Maturity doesn't really go with age. You can have somebody who is 30 and still behaves like a 16-year-old. You can have somebody who is 45 and can still be very childish. So it's a bit difficult. But if we want to go on the medical side, scientific, emotional side, I think she does have a strong point there. Because if we're coming out with this law just to make sure that we reduce the number of children being born within a certain bracket, I don't think that would work, because you still have young children getting pregnant at age 15, 16, even some 14. Even though the law is there, they are still doing it. So I think we should rather come out with an educational program on this. When they understand it themselves, we wouldn't have any problem at all. Even without passing the law, it would work.
According to her, it is not only about religion but physical fitness to be able to engage in regular sexual intercourse leading to childbirth and mental preparedness in raising a family.
Medically, the doctors, the medical field should be able to come out to tell us whether at that age a lady is ready physically to get married, for having sex as a married person, pregnancy, childbirth, and even the state of mind to be able to raise a child.
Some students of the University of Ghana also share their opinion.
People don't really understand what is meant by marriage before they enter into it. So, entry into marriage is not about you thinking you are matured or you thinking you are wise. I am even thinking whenever someone wants to enter into marriage at that stage, there should be a law that will compel the person to see a counselor.
Our employment system is dual in the sense that both men and women are working, and then moreover, when it comes to our educational system, you realize most women are now involved in it compared to those days when they will say ladies should be at home to help their mothers cook and stuff.
There are some people at the age of 16, they are more than ready, but others at the age of 25, they are not yet ready. So I think increasing the age does not matter, but the education on marriage is what matters.
But when the person is 23 years, the person might have acquired a level of education, and the person would have had a widened scope of thoughts, so the person can raise a family other than marrying at 18.
Marriage is a lifetime issue. At 18, if I should say me, for instance, still at 21, I don't think I'm even ready for any marriage.
If the law to adjust the marriage age upwards is to ever see the light of day, young people will be the ones it affects the most. Raising the current marriage age from 18 to 23 is a sensitive issue that transcends legalities. Laws do not necessarily prevent immorality or sexual experiments. The government statistician has made a very laudable suggestion. However, like other awareness campaigns, advocacy, education, meaningful persuasion rather than force can get the best results. Matilda Nyakwa Dennis for Joy News.
My appeal is that we should ensure that this campaign is carried out in a clean manner. My brothers and sisters who are gathered here,
the President of the Republic of Ghana, Professor John Evans Atta Mills.
The President of Ghana, John Atta Mills, has died.
President Mills has paid the ultimate price for this country.
And indeed, we remember former President Mills. Now, what's happening on our Facebook wall today? Our hot issue. Communication Director for the late President Mills, Koku Anyidoho, has been speaking to Joy News about his final moments with him. So what we're asking you today is, which questions would you wish to ask him about President Mills? You brought in a lot of your comments. We'll take that. But before that, let's quickly go to Parliament and see what they've been saying about him. Now, as Parliament rises to go on recess, members of both sides of the House eulogized the late President, Professor John Evans Atta Mills, on the floor of the House. They recounted their fondest memories of the late President, Professor Mills.
It first started with a statement by the Deputy Minister of Education, Samuel Kujetu Ablakwa, as the House remembers the late President.
It is to his legacy that the Job 600 project meant to House MPs was restarted. he also mooted the idea of constituency offices, which was piloted in a few constituencies before his untimely departure.
Other members from both sides of the divide also contributed to the statement.
Exemplify the life of Fifi. He and I, there was another spot we used to meet. I won't name it. Most people know him, know where it was. The Shell, Airport Shell. If you're looking for Fifi, you can't find him. I've named it. You'll find him there. So I think that it is well that he had the opportunity to be president. My only worry sometimes, actually the only regret I have is that I believe Speaker, I believe you are aware, I think his only complaint about it is that when he was vice president, I always used to visit him. But when he was president, I never got a chance to visit him in the castle, and then he died. And that's my only regret.
Mr. Speaker, for me, the legacy of President Mills was his sense of humility and modesty. And I believe that coming generation of politicians or leaders of this country must necessarily learn from the hallmark of President J.E.A. Mills, which hallmark, as I've indicated, as a remarkable political figure, was modesty and humility.
Neil Ante van der Poel, who was a presidential staffer during Atta Mills' regime, also shared his encounter with the late president.
My fondest memory of him was at difficult times when he has to call me. We sit together at a table, we eat, then we discuss national issues, asking the questions that ordinary people in the street are asking about his presidency and about him. Asking me about those insults, asking me about those criticisms. And I tell him, and he taking time and said, asking me, do you think I deserve all this? Then I would say no. I remember vividly those situations, and I thank God for those moments.
Other MPs also spoke of the legacy of the former president.
I quite remember about 8 months before he died, there was an event in the International Conference Center, which started at 9:30. Atta Mills started the program when his ministers were not there. And when they came, they were embarrassed, they couldn't enter. That is a man who understands. For me, the most painful that he couldn't calculate this sort of discipline into some of us, the youth, or those who have slept before he left.
I just like the man, not because he's an NDC, but his humility, the way he talks, the way he receives everybody, whether big or small, whoever you are, will make you feel like you are a human being. So that alone, I ask myself, God, why should such a man pass on at this age?
Parliament will be on recess till 22nd October.
So the comments keep coming, so keep yours coming, and let's know what you think or what you want to ask Koku Anyidoho. But he became known as one of the late president's closest aides and may have even spent more time with him on any working day than his close family. So a year after his passing, the former communications director at the presidency, Koku Anyidoho, would certainly be one of those missing him terribly. He recalls in the following interview his moments with Professor Mills and urges Ghanaians to hold in honor the peace Professor Mills stood for.
The former communications director recalls the day Professor Mills was declared medically dead.
It's sad. The memory will never go away. 24th of July 2012, after everything had been sorted out by the medics, and then you are invited to get into the intensive care unit, and there's your boss, your father, your mentor, and find them he's really gone medically.
Given a second chance with Professor Mills, Koku says there is nothing he did for the late president that he would have done differently, adding he would do same for President Mahama.
I have no regrets. Wind the clock back and I'll do what I did for President Mills. Yeah, I have no regrets. Today is the turn of President Mahama. I'll do the same thing if the opportunity avails itself. But I had a job to do.
1 year on, Koku still cannot hold back his tears.
It's sad. It's 1 year. It doesn't look like he'll come back again. But I thank God that out of 24, 25 million Ghanaians, he gave me the opportunity to work for him. And may his soul rest in peace.
He remembers Professor Mills as a good man who changed the style of governance in Ghana. For Koku, nothing is honoring enough than maintaining the peace Professor Mills fought and stood for.
Remembering Professor Mills, an emotional Koku Anyidoho there. So let me tell you what you have posted on our Facebook wall. Now, Boache Success Emmanuel was the first to bring in his comment, and he says that he wants to find out, was he a listener, as people said? Nana Osei Jacob said, what killed late, well, I assume that you want to say what killed late President Mills. Al-Hassan Bukhari said, what really caused the death of our peace-loving Professor Mills? And a trend going on there. Where is Professor Mills's death report? That is by G.H. Tony the Aristocrat. Bernard Deborah Enieje says, Ghanaians want to know what really killed our president. And it goes on and on and on. And someone, Charles Nigarim, says God called him. Northern Governor says Mills was a good person, a good president, a good leader. May his soul rest in peace. What killed him still going on there. Prosper Silenso Atisogbi said, I would like to know from Koku what makes Prof happy, and was he a listener, as was said on the airwaves. Baba Musa Tamale says the late President Mills was really a man of peace. Ghana will forever remember him. Koku, my greetings to you. Wycliffe says, what happened to my president and where is he? Peter Kojo said, why did Anyidoho not let the man rest when he was sick? Bernard Deborah Nieje again says, well, he's trying to find out what really killed him again. Isif Nuruddin says, which of the did he spend with our late president that will forever remain in his mind? You want to know the moments that Koku Anyidoho spent with the President Mills that will forever remain in his mind. Jose Antonio Moreno says, now, how was Professor Mills reacting to all the insults that people rained on him? So these are the comments, a lot more of them coming in. As and when we have time, we'll roll them out to you. But when we return from this very quick break, we'll bring you the business news.
My appeal is that we should ensure that this campaign is carried out in a clean manner. My brothers and sisters who are gathered here.
The President of the Republic of Ghana, Professor John Evans Atamils.
The President of Ghana, John Atamils, has died.
President Mills has paid the ultimate price for this country.
Welcome to the business news. Now, the National Pensions Regulatory Authority says it has no intentions to regulate and at the same time play in the sector, as has been suggested because of its plan to establish a holding pensions trust. The authority wants to implement the initiative by September as part of its strategies to compel firms which are not remitting their workers second-tier contributions to do so. In an interview with Joy Business, the chief executive, Sam P. Yali, said the move is primarily to encourage entrepreneurs to take advantage of business opportunities presented by the pensions reforms.
Our duty is to promote the compliance of this act. Now, if we have monitored and seen that the trustees are not interested for commercial reasons to step out of Accra and Tema, must we sit down for that reason and people outside Accra and Tema not be covered by the act? No. So we're coming up with strategies that will make sure that many people come within the act. One of such strategies, which has been done elsewhere, is that they create a holding pension trust. But MPR is not, we are not players, we are regulators. We are not going to establish a company to do that. We are promoting the idea so that any Ghanaian, including the existing trustees, who would have the business plan that, for me, I want to reach the unreachables. You understand? He would then have to bring us all the documents, his capacity, ICT, like any other trustee. Then he will register with a business plan not to stay in Accra and Tema. So that will be a special incentive for him. His cost is going to be so high, higher than those in Accra and Tema. But at least he may have a bigger chunk of the population. That may be the added advantage.
The Securities and Exchange Commission has granted applaud Group's request not to take over Fan Mill Ghana, despite moves to acquire majority stake in the beverage firm. Joy Business gathers the approval was secured last week. Sources say the regulator granted the appeal because it does not expect the transaction to affect shareholders in Ghana. The private equity firm last month announced that it is in discussions to take over Fan Milk International. This means applaud would have effectively acquired the Ghana unit of the beverage firm. But in a request to SEC, applaud asked to be exempted from making a mandatory request to the rest of the shareholders to acquire Fan Mill Ghana. The private equity firm can now go ahead and conclude the deal because it was the main condition for securing the regulator's approval. Under the Code on Takeovers and Mergers, a firm is required to make a mandatory offer to other shareholders when its interest reaches 30%. Some analysts have criticized introduction of new taxes by government, saying they are not sustainable and will only increase the tax burden of the target group. They are therefore calling on government to find innovative ways of widening the tax net to generate more revenue for the economy.
Dwindling revenue inflows has pushed government to introduce new taxes, including the Fiscal Stabilization Levy, Communication Services Tax, and the Import Levy. Though the country's fiscal situation demands these taxes, some analysts say they are not economically sustainable.
When we make some allowance for new investments in these companies and ensure that we don't tax those particular components of profit after tax, we will be in a better position to ensure that these particular sectors actually continue to expand and drive growth. And I think that even with enormous tax, spending pressures on the government against tax revenue, even in the short term, you have to make some allowance for new investment in these entities.
They believe the Fiscal Stabilization Levy, for instance, will render targeted companies less competitive.
Fiscal stabilization tax, I don't think it's a good idea, because our companies, our industry, their production costs are very high, and you don't want to overburden them further. They will become less competitive already. They can't compete with the cheaper imports that are coming from Asia and so on. So our manufacturing sector, that is dwindling. If you do that, it will continue to decline, and that's not what we want. I won't put it on them. I will find other means of either widening the tax net or maybe targeting those luxury goods and services which are used more by rich people.
For them, the depreciating value of the cedi is a reflection of the weak fundamentals of the economy. Though a government Eurobond and Koku syndicated loan is expected to stabilize the cedi, it will only be for the short term. For these analysts, the cedi can only remain stable after a total economic transformation.
That broader framework of trying to come up with a sustainable and a more credible approach to monetary policy that will take into account development in the balance of payments, the currency stability, and then also at the same time domestic financial stability and economic growth becomes more like a bit more complicated.
Unless we transform this economy, diversify our exports, add value to the exports so that we earn more, promoting domestic industrialization such that domestic industry can produce the imports that people are importing, the goods and people are importing, then this pressure on the cedi is going to continue.
They will also want to see the central bank deal with the long-standing challenge of an unstable cedi in a robust manner. Abigail Adumakwenchi for Joy News.
In international business, Chinese authorities have given the banking industry greater freedom by allowing banks to set their own lending rate. Previously, they were not allowed to lend at rates below a certain level. Now, squatters at Kwada Sobola Kesiam slum in Kumasi are accusing some unidentified task force at the Kumasi Metropolitan Assembly for allegedly destroying their property in an attempt to demolish structures at the site. According to the squatters, the task force stormed the site and started pulling down structures and destroying property, including their cooked food worth hundreds of cedis and which was prepared for sale. Mahmoud Mohamed Nuruddin reports.
On Wednesday morning, squatters living here sensed an end to their shelter when a task force claiming to have come from the Kumasi Metropolitan Assembly attempted to demolish structures. Several properties were also destroyed in the process. The slum is believed to be a hideout for criminals, which appear to be part of the reason to clear the place. But residents are unhappy with the manner the exercise was to be carried. They say even though they were served with a notice to evacuate, their plea for an extension was to enable them save enough money for a new place. Ama Ayamga expressed her dissatisfaction with the whole operation. She claimed to have lost 600 Ghana cedis during the attempted demolition exercise. Joy News intercepted a letter from the Dominas's Two land dated 11th June this year, giving notice to the squatters to evacuate. In the letter, the owner of the land, Bafo Yabuating Dominasi Hene, gave the encroachers 1 month to evacuate. If they failed, they would be ejected without further notice. But the encroachers are not apprehensive about the evacuation. They are not too excited about being described as criminals. Residents are appealing to the Kumasi Metropolitan Assembly and Dominasi Hene to allow them stay a while longer. Mahmoud Mohamed Nuruddin's report for Joy News.
Sports has brought you now.
Time for the very latest in the world of sports. Now, Sports Minister Elvis Afriyie says budget allocation is woefully inadequate to support the associations under the National Sports Authority. The lack of funds has disrupted activities and prevented less financed sports to compete at major competitions. Elvis Afriyie says sports associations must have other sources of funding to support the government.
What was his problem and related problem? It's got to do with bonuses, it's got to do with money, funding. And it's very easy to say, oh, no problem, the problem will be solved. How will you solve the problem? You look at the problem from the foundation. You deal with it from the root. The root cause is that the quantum of money that is available from government is limited. And everywhere in this world, government, there's a limit as to how much government can put into sports. The new trend is that you leverage with the corporate world. And that is where we are going. Once we do that and there's a new stream of funding comes in, it is easier then to track athletes, both local and foreign, give them the necessary training, equipment, give them the necessary motivation and incentive, and then we'll be dealing with the problem from the root. Hey, what happened is a symptom of a larger problem. So if you do not understand the root cause of the problem and you deal with the symptom, the root cause, many such problems will occur. So we want to deal with it from the root.
In international sport, Chris Froome survived another barrage of mountains and rain-soaked descents to retain his Tour de France lead as breakaway rider Rui Costa soloed to his second victory of the race on stage 19. Froome was able to stay with his closest rivals over the 204.5 kilometer 5 categorized climbs.
Time now for some showbiz. Now the honeymoon is over for the 10 finalists in the Vodafone Icon Street Edition. 2 contestants have been evicted from the show, and this is the first of many evictions before the finale.
The heat is now on in the 3rd season of the popular TV music talent show Vodafone Icons Street Edition. 10 talented singers are competing for a mouth-watering prize package, including an international recording contract with Universal Records. Thursday night saw the top 10 finalists perform for the 3rd straight week, but by the end of the night, only 8 contestants were left. Harry, Joyce and multi-TV Sarah Opare were in the bottom 3, having received the least amount of votes from the public. But the judges decided to save Sarah.
And I'll be asking you for your answers on who you would like to save in this competition.
All right, Ghana's female representative at the ongoing Big Brother Africa, the Chase reality show, Selom Gali or Selly, has expressed shock at reports that she has sex with Tanzanian housemate Nando and infected him with a sexually transmitted disease. Selly, who was one of the 2 Ghanaians in the reality show, was evicted from the show last Sunday.
Nando and I did not have, and I do not have any background of STIs.
Okay, so you and I went there indeed. But that's how we wrap up for the showbiz, and that's indeed how we wrap up the bulletin. Our top stories tonight: former President Rawlings commends justices hearing the election petition, but urges them to ensure they deliver a ruling that would inspire the confidence of both the winners and the losers. His successor, President Kufuor, shares similar sentiments. Meanwhile, IDEC says Ghanaians must preach the message of peace before delivery of the Supreme Court's ruling. Communications Director for late President Mills recalls his final moments as part of our series on the 1st anniversary of his passing. And squatters at Kumasi Slum accused KMA of wrongful destruction of their property. We looked also at proposals to increase the marriage age from 18 to 23. My name is Gifty Andopia. Many thanks for your time. Do have a good evening.